Hello, welcome to Second Watch, your direct line to the second mass. I'm Wil Wheaton. We have just seen the latest episode of Faling Skies, and now Noah Wyle and executive producer and director Greg Beeman are on hand to talk about the harness factory and those terrifying contraptions. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
A lot happened this week, but I want to start out with that creepy harness factory, because that place was terrifying. Greg, will you tell us about the design and how it was brought to life?
Well, I think it all started in the writer's room from the idea that I think the audience wanted to know, and we wanted to know, how do the harnesses get on the kids? We never really knew that. So we set up the goal of just making it as scary and creepy as possible, and we scouted lots and lots of different locations to find it. That actual location was a big, giant, abandoned paper factory. And I think we were shooting it in the middle of the winter, and it was a giant concrete structure that was way colder inside than it was outside. It was below freezing. It was like a meat locker in there the whole time.
Sounds like Vancouver.
It is Vancouver.
Yeah. How much of that set was practical and how much was CGI?
None of it was CGI. The factory had these big giant pipes and stuff, and then we built the ramps and the big tank that the harnesses were in. Some of the harnesses that were swimming behind the clouded glass were actually puppets on rods that were being puppeteered. And then when we got into editing, we enhanced those with some CGI puppets. And then the ones that attack the kids and swim down the ramps are about half and half. They're half just rod puppeted, like they're operated with two rods, and some of them are CGI, and they are intercut pretty seamlessly.
Do you want to tell us anything about the origins of those harness monster creature slug things?
Well, the original concept was always, as written by Bob Rodat, who created the show, that these harnesses on the kids' backs were controlling our children. And Rob Gray, our production designer, designed the initial concept of the harnesses, which really influenced a huge amount of the look of the show in terms of the design of the alien world. Mainly, we decided that the aliens have a biotechnology. They go from planet to planet, and they kind of harvest whatever creatures are on whatever planets that they're taking over, and they use them as their weapon. So we assumed that there was some kind of leechy creature on some planet, and that they added an armory element to them, and kind of biotechnology created them.
I have a long history with leeches, and that explains to me why the harness creatures are so disturbing to me. Noah, dad to dad.
Yep.
What is it going to do to Tom if he gets into that harness factory, sees Matt, and he cannot save him?
That's pretty much the stakes the character operates under continually. His kids are always safest, in his opinion, when they're within his own arm's reach. And anytime they're outside those boundaries, anything could happen. And it would be absolutely devastating, especially with Matt, because that's the one kid that he's really tried to shelter and shield from the realities of this world, and try to give some semblance of a childhood to. Probably at Matt's detriment, who's really, chomping at the bit to get into the fight and grow up a little faster than Tom wants him to.
That's one of those things that we as parents always try to fight against, right? Like when the kids are going to go and leave the nest, and he wants to leave the nest during an alien invasion.
Right. Well, it speaks to that sort of the philosophical divide about which is the kinder parenting technique. Do you want to keep your kids safe and protect them from the horrors of the world, or are you doing them a disservice by not training them and arming them and letting them defend themselves in the hopes that their children or their children's children will have the childhood that they were robbed of?
Weaver and Tom are a man of action and a man of contemplation. So your and Will's characters started out butting heads all the time. But tonight, we see Weaver show some very real vulnerability when he comes to Tom and talks to him about his daughter. So what do you think the turning point was in the relationship between these two men?
I think we sort of started to build it over the course of last season. But I think obviously him reuniting with his daughter and rekindling the parental flame within himself is probably the catalyst for this change of heart, which begins a bit of a transference where he becomes a bit more of the humanist and Tom becomes a bit more of the militarist as he realizes that there's no negotiation to be had with these aliens, that this is going to be a problem until it's not a problem anymore, and there's not going to be any middle ground.
So, spoiler alert.
Yep.
You see Tom moving away from being professorial and contemplative and moving more toward being confrontational as the season goes on?
There's a bit of an arc to it where we deconstruct the intellectual, and eventually the pendulum swings a little farther the other way, and then it finds a sort of happy medium. And I think by the end of the second season, he's sort of found the synthesis between the two ideologies, Weaver's and his own, that make for a very effective leadership strategy for this particular group of people.
Interesting. Greg, in this episode, we see a human side of Weaver when his daughter appears. Noah's talking about how their relationships are starting, their roles are starting to switch. So, speaking as a creator on the show, why is this development so important to the arcs of the characters and the overall arc of the season?
Well, I think in general, we want to dig deeper and dig beneath the surface of our characters' lives, and it's one of the things that I think makes the show great, is we really want to explore all sides and not just have people be one-dimensional. And Wil Wheaton is a very inundated actor. He really wraps himself up in the character, and it was very important to him to be at the auditions for the actresses who were reading for his daughter Jeannie, and so he had a big part in hiring the young lady Lacey who plays his daughter, and they had a real connection, and those kind of things you can't really create. They just happen.
Now, you can keep the audience in the dark about this if you want to. I'm giving you permission to not answer my next question.
All right.
Do you think their paths will cross again in their characters' futures?
Well, it's a big world, but there's only so many roads in it, so.
Right. Okay.
We really liked her and thought she was very effective in the show. So, she might return.
It's a meritocracy. If we like what you do,
you live.
See, actors, be good on the set, and a road might lead back to your character. That's how it works.
Or
the other way, which is where you get eaten by aliens. Speaking of being eaten by the aliens, Noah, we all want to know, can Tom be trusted? Because everybody seems very skeptical, and Tom himself seems skeptical.
Well, rightly so. He was gone for a long time. He was in captivity. He doesn't have total recall of what was happening to him when he was on board the ship. He was released very suspiciously, being left as the sole survivor to deliver a message or to act as homing pigeon. We don't know. But that's something that gets teased out over the course of the season.
So, to you as an actor, Tom has to keep people safe and take care of the kids in the second mass, and generally the one person you can rely on in a crisis situation, no matter what, is yourself.
Right.
But how does he feel? Can he genuinely rely on himself, or is he second-guessing himself? Am I going to turn into a sleeper agent or something like that?
I don't think he has that fear. I don't think he has the fear that he's going to go through some sort of mental shift and become the enemy himself. I think he's more concerned that he's inadvertently led the aliens back to the second mass, and that it's questionable judgment as to whether or not his need to be with his family is actually putting them in more peril than if he had just stayed away.
It is time for questions from the audience. Hello, audience. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Do you have questions for Greg and or Noah?
I do.
Okay.
Noah, your character was a history professor before the aliens invaded, and your character has used history to boost morale and come up with battle plans. So I just want to know, are you a history buff in real life when you're not playing your character?
I am a bit of a history buff. Yeah, I tend to read a lot of nonfiction. That was one of the things I thought was really appealing about the character. And I really like the aspect of him being a history teacher, which seems like a lot of esoteric knowledge in this particular world, but then finding that these historical precedents actually could inform tactical decision-making gave him a bit of confidence, and was sort of the first moment where he felt that he had something to contribute to this group. And the fact that he was a teacher makes him a little bit better prepared to lead a civilian army, an adolescent army at that, maybe even more so than somebody who was a career militarist like Weaver.
All right. Anybody else?
Hi, I have a question for Greg. Ben seems to really enjoy killing skitters these days. I'm wondering how the continued presence of those spikes in his back are affecting his psyche.
Well, I think it's similar to what Tom's going through. Ben isn't really sure what the spikes do for him. He hates them. He hates the aspect of himself that's been compromised. But it's funny because when I first heard the storyline that was being developed for the character of Ben in the summer, a couple months before we started production, I called up Connor Jessup in
Hit the gym.
Connor, I said, I go, you got a huge story this year. I literally said that. I said, start doing push-ups, start eating your Wheaties. You got a huge storyline, and you're going to be a warrior this year. And he literally, his mother told me, like, he literally that night called a trainer and started working. He was a very unathletic kid before that, and he really took that challenge, and as you guys see watching the show, he came around incredibly.
That's pretty serious commitment to be
Hitting
able
the
to
gym,
do that.
I would never do it, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, who has time for that? There's
No matter
More
what.
of a commitment to starve yourself to have the apocalyptic look.
Yeah.
I will say that Tom and Weaver are on the second mass diet all the time, aren't they? You and Noah and Will just barely eat
I'd see
food.
Will at craft service. I say, "What are you doing over there, Will?" He goes, "Nothing, Mom. I'm having a little rice cake and I'm drizzling a little olive oil on it. I'm having a bay leaf."
We tempt them with brownies and.
Oh, that's so cruel.
Yeah.
You ever do that to get that desperation out of them at the end of the day? It's just like
on
brownie on a stick.
On take
You're like,
20.
Yeah.
You want to finish this scene?
Yeah.
You really need Weaver to drool in this scene.
Next question. Yes.
I have a question for Greg as well. In this episode, we met a whole new group of survivors. Are there more out there?
There are more out there, and some are good and some are bad. I mean, this is a very interesting story that the writers came up with, that, these are kids who are living on their own, their parents have been killed, and they don't trust adults. So there's lots and lots of different permutations of the kind of people we find surviving in the world available.
I had this thought after the episode tonight that I just had never occurred to me over any of the episodes thus far, that there would be pockets of survivors who are not interested in being in the resistance. They just want to live their lives. Do you see the second mass kind of encountering these people, maybe trying to recruit them, or just going, all right, good luck, guys?
Well, I think the second mass in general has a philosophy that anyone that wants to participate is welcome, and anybody who's not interested, they will just let. I think they're non-judgmental, but they have to keep moving.
Yeah.
And obviously a big storyline that's developing throughout the season is this idea of Charleston, that there may be this mecca out there, and some people have more hope about it than others, but the second mass is, as the end of this episode is developing, are pretty committed to starting to move that direction, and maybe survivors from all over the country are gathering there.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Hey,
Thank you, Will.
Noah and Greg. All right, that's all for tonight's Second Watch. In the meantime, you can find more trivia and behind-the-scenes videos from Faling Sky right here at tntdrama.com. Tune into TNT next Sunday at 9 p.m. for a new episode of Faling Skies. Then come back here to tntdrama.com for a new episode of Second Watch with actors Connor Jessup, Drew Roy, and executive producer Rami Abushan. Until next week, keep the resistance strong.